Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's tourism lesson. My name is Evans Maponya. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. You can text your queries on WhatsApp on this number that I'm going to read out. It's 079 578 2908. I'm repeating the number. It's 079 578 2908. Grade 12 learners, our today's topic is centered around map work and tour planning. And the subtopic is calculation of world time zones. I trust that in front of your tables, you have placed a world time zone map as indicated before, that this week our focus will be on calculation. Remember last week, we were on the same topic, but the focus was on the theory part, looking into concepts as well as the lines of longitudes and the lines of latitude that are crucial to our understanding of world time zone. Where will this topic be assessed? You'll come across questions on time zone in question number 2, which is your section B of the final exam paper. And these questions are also featured in section A, short questions, that is your question 1. You will also be assessed on time zones during controlled test, skills assessment task, the practical assessment task, as well as the preliminary examination and the final examination, as I have indicated. Here are your lesson objectives, what you need to know and what you need to master as I take you through time zone calculations. You as grade 12 learners, you need to know the world time zones, which we have introduced last week. You need to understand how to calculate world times when traveling between countries. You must be able to determine when to apply daylight saving time from the scenario or the extracts which will be provided during assessments. Grade 12 learners, you must also understand the impact of time zones and DST, which we said is daylight saving time, on travel planning and traveling. You must also show all calculation as marks will be awarded for each step that you go through the calculations. These are your basic calculations. They are basic in such a way that they give you an indication that different parts of the world have different times. So the time, for instance, in New York may not be the same time as Cape Town in South Africa. So different regions of the world derive their time from different time zones or timelines that they are distributed on. So this is just a demonstration of different clocks in different regions of the world. And this forms the basis of calculating time zones. The World Time Zone Map, which I've just indicated that should be in front of you as we speak now, because all the calculations that we'll be doing will refer to this map. And I expect every one of you, my guest, to have this piece of important paper in front of you. Maybe to refresh your memories, this is our west. We spoke about it at length in the previous lesson. And this is east of our map. And this is the 0 degrees longitude, which we said is our Greenwich meridian timeline, which we said it's our universal time coordinate when we defined it a week ago. So what is important is that going to the left or going westwards, you always subtract, and eastwards you add. It also suggests that the time this side, which is the west, is behind the time in the east. This says to us that regions or countries or cities located in the east of the map sees the day before the east. So the west. So the eastern regions, the eastern countries will see a new day before the western or countries allocated in the western side of this map, which we said the universal time coordinate, the UTC, divides the Earth into east and western hemisphere. Now, the first step of our calculation, I'm going to take you through calculation of the time difference. So our point of departure for our calculations will be establishing the time difference between two countries or between two cities. Right. Here the question refers you to Johannesburg and New York. So Johannesburg is at +2 and New York is at -5. So it says for you to be able to calculate the time difference, you first need to identify the cities mentioned in the question. Secondly, you need to determine or to establish the applicable time zone from the map. The applicable time zone where the cities in questions are located or are situated. You count from one to the other. For example, in this case, which we said we have Johannesburg, and this side we have New York. So for you to determine the time difference between these two cities, you can use the ribbon as projected on this slide. So this ribbon indicates the location of the two cities, that is Johannesburg and New York. Johannesburg, which is at +2, and New York is at -5. So if you use the ribbon, which is similar to the top of your map, which we'll see as we progress with the lesson. So you're going to count the time difference by manually saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the difference in time between these two cities is 7 hours. As indicated here, we've counted 7 times. So that is the difference in time between these two cities. Now, here is your question. Determine the time difference between the cities in column 1 as opposed to cities in column 2. Right. So the first one asks us to determine between New York and Cape Town, and we'll write the time difference this side. Los Angeles and New York, and then we'll indicate the time. London and Johannesburg will indicate the time. Alaska and London will also indicate the time. Sydney and Japan will indicate the time. Moscow and Delhi in India will also determine the time. We'll go on like this to determine the time difference. And if we are able to convincingly determine the time between the two cities, then you shall have managed to achieve step number 1 in our calculation. So here is our time zone map, which we said it will be our point of reference when we do calculations. So the ribbon that I have alluded to has been extracted from this map to make things easier for you. We have taken this belt for you out of this map so that we work out our calculation easier. Hence, I spoke of a ribbon that will help you through the calculation. Now, here is the time differences between the question that we had earlier. It was asking us to determine the time difference between New York and Cape Town. New York is at -5, Cape Town is at +2. Now, as we have done the counts, as in the case of Johannesburg, which is in South Africa, and the timeline that the rest of South Africa gets time from is +2. So nothing changes here. As in the case, we have counted 7 times, and we have arrived to a time difference of 7. Los Angeles is at -8, and New York is at -5. So if you use the ribbon, you'll have the 0 longitude, which we said is our universal time coordinate, which is the UCT, and you count to the left because both Los Angeles and New York are in the west. The other one is at minus 5. I'll do 5 counts from the 0 degrees longitude, which we said it's our UTC. I'll count -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So this look more or less the same as your world map, and we said New York is at -3 and Los Angeles is at let me say LS is at -8. So we want to know the time difference between the two cities, and as we count backwards from -5, which is our New York, as we count back from -5, we would say 1, 2, 3, and this gives us the time difference of 3. London and Johannesburg. Johannesburg is at +2 and London is at 0. And as you add 2 lines towards the east, because of the plus, which indicates that Johannesburg is east of the universal time coordinate, then you will arrive at a difference of 2, where this is London and this is Johannesburg at +2. And when you count, it will give you a difference of 2. So you'll say 1, 2. So the time difference between Johannesburg and London is 2, or 2 hours. 2 hours, you either write it in full or you write HRS. So this is your time difference, and this refers to the number of hours of time difference. So Anchorage in Alaska is at +9 and London is at 0. So counting 9 times from 0, you'll arrive at a time difference of 9. Sydney is at +10 and Tokyo in Japan is +9. So the time difference counting from 9 to 10, it will be 1 hour. Moscow is at +3 and Delhi in India is at +5.5. And the time difference between the two countries will be 2.5. Isn't it? When you add, when you subtract 3 from 5.5, you will remain with 2.5. So this is the time difference. The time difference in hours, it will be 2.5 hours. And as soon as you see the 0.5, any number plus 0.5, the 0.5 suggests to you that is a half of an hour. 0.5 or 0.5 is half of 1. So at 5.1, then you are talking of 5 hours and 30 minutes. Hong Kong is at +8 and Riyadh is at +4. So Riyadh is at +4, Hong Kong is at +8. Now the time difference here cannot be 5, but it will be 4. So it will be 4 hours of time difference. 8 minus 4, you'd have 4 remaining. Paris and Cairo, the other one is at +1 and Cairo is at +2. So the time difference here is 1. So you move only one step to the next time. Rio de Janeiro is at -3 and Windhoek is at +1. It's at +1. Now, another correction that I would like to make is that Windhoek, which is found in Namibia, has adopted +2 as the timeline. They decided to get rid of daylight saving time and they converted to +2. So they derived their time from +2, not +1. So the time difference between the two countries is a 5, because when you move from +2, which is our Windhoek, this is 0, and we are counting westwards 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. So Rio is at -3, which is somewhere there, and you'll have Windhoek at +2. So we are going to move or to count towards Rio from Windhoek, and you'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, and the correct time difference between the two cities is 5 hours. Cairo and Johannesburg both are at +2, meaning that they get their time from the same line of longitude, and this makes their time difference to be 0, meaning that they run at the same time. So there is no time difference between these two countries. This is the first step of calculation. Please try and practice and try to build your confidence as more and more calculations, more and more steps follow. We are done. We have covered the calculation of the time difference. We have mentioned so many examples to help us understand that first step, which is the initial step of time zone calculations. The next step would be calculating basic time zone. So this is step number 2. Write down the two cities mentioned in the question, add the time zone from the map, calculate the difference on the ribbon on the top of the map, which I have mapped out for you, which I've indicated for you. You need to also write down the time mentioned in question. If you move west to the other city, you minus the time difference from the given time. And if you move to the other city, you plus the time difference to the given time. So westwards, you minus, and eastwards, you plus. Count these hours on a 24-hour clock on the bottom of the map. So the time zone map that you will be provided with has a 24-hour clock. I think in the previous lesson, we spoke at length about the 24-hour clock, and we'll see how it works to your best understanding of the topic. Basic calculation practice. Now we are going to apply the little theory entailed in the previous slide, in the previous notes, that indicated that when you go to the west, you always subtract, and eastwards you minus. So here is the question. It says, calculate the time in New York when it is 10:00 in South Africa. This is how the time is transcribed. This is how you should write your time. Right. Mostly, you will not be referred to the country, but you will be referred to the cities. So in this case, we can either pick Johannesburg or Cape Town. Right. On this step, you have been given the time in South Africa, which is 10 hours. And the time that you need to establish is that of New York. I've demonstrated the first step of the calculation, which is finding the time difference. So for you to find the time difference, you need to locate the time zones for the two cities in question. Now, in this case, we have South Africa, and the rest of the cities in South Africa get their time from +2. So we have the first line, which is +2. So New York, after looking at the map, you establish that New York is at -5. So now you have your two lines of longitude, the +2, which represents South Africa, and the -5, which represent New York. Now, the first step, as we indicated, we said, is to determine the time difference. We have identified the location of our two cities in question, and the time difference +2 -5, as you count using the ribbon, you will arrive at a time difference of 7 hours. So if you start counting from +2 towards the west, because the west is where our question is. It's the time which we would want to establish, which we want to determine, as the question wants us to calculate the time of New York when it is 10 o'clock. So this is our +2, and the time that we are given for the +2, which is South Africa, is 10 hours. Now, New York, the time is unknown, hence the question mark. It is unknown. So, New York is found west of South Africa. So, it means in our calculation, we are going to minus, because we are moving from east to west, or where we are given the time from the east and we want to determine the time of the city which is in the west, then we need to apply the minus sign or symbol. So it's 10 hours here, and when we minus the 7 hours of time difference, we will move to 3 hours. So if the time here is 10 hours, which is the eastern region, and we want to determine from the west, we minus the time difference from the given time, and we remain with 3 hours. So if in South Africa is 10 hours or 10:00, then in New York is 03:00, and it is the same day. So it further strengthens the idea that the countries or the regions that are located in the east are ahead of time than countries situated in the west, as you can see in the case of South Africa and New York. Can you see that now that New York is behind South Africa with 7 hours of time? So the difference between the two countries in respect of time is 7 hours. So New York is behind Johannesburg or Cape Town by 7 hours. Hence, our answer comes, or we arrive at a 3-hour time. So this 03:00, just to demonstrate the time difference. So now I have provided for you an opportunity to calculate with confidence two things or two steps we have accomplished in this part of calculation of time zones, two steps of our calculation. That is, the first one, we have managed to calculate the time difference between the two cities. And secondly, we managed to calculate the time in one city when the time in another city is given for us, as in the case here. I hope grade 12 learners, you are following every single step of the calculation. Right, before we get to this one, I just need us to familiarize. I know you have read this, but let me go through them with you. The arrow shows towards the question mark to determine east plus or west minus. So in this case, the arrow points to the minus side, hence we have applied this sign. The two vertical lines, these are your two vertical lines, the +2 and the +5, represent two cities must be in the same position as the location of the cities on the time zone map. So we have extracted these two lines in question from our world time zones. We have taken away these two lines from the rest of the lines from our time zone map so that we deal specifically with the two lines. I trust that you follow grade 12 learners. And as we move forward, the final game for the Rugby World Cup was broadcasted from Paris on 25 November at 20 hours. Calculate the time and date that the rugby fanatics in Sydney could watch the live broadcast. Bear in mind, we are given the time in Paris, and we want to find out the time in Sydney, Australia. Hence, the question mark tells us that here we don't know the time. So let's work out the time, what the time will be in Sydney if in Paris is 20 hours on the 25th of November. Here is our marking guide for the question that we have just seen or interacted with. Now, the given time was 20 hours. Now, Paris, which is in France, is at +1 longitude, line of longitude, whereas, or in +1 time zone, whereas Sydney is located in +10. Immediately, the plus tells you that these countries are all in the east. Now, but, however, being the situation that both countries are in the east, we have our given time here, which is Paris, and we want to determine the time in the far east of Paris, which is Sydney, Australia. Right. We have extracted our line, our +1 and our +10, which you have to visually draw this line so that you don't falter along the way of your calculation. Right. Paris is at +1, this one is at +10, and moving from 1 to 10, or you can simply minus the 1 hour from the 10 hours, and your time difference will be 9 hours. Look at the direction arrow. It means we are moving, or we want to determine the time for the country in the east, so we always plus. We apply the plus sign. So if we move from 20 and 9 places or 9 time zones from the 20 hours, which gives us our +9 hours, and you would arrive on the 5th of, at 5:00 on the 26th of November. For you to get the answer, you are advised to use the clock given on the time zone map. Right. 2 cities, time zones, time difference, add the lines, arrow, and add the given times. So this demonstrates what you should do. So 2 cities is Paris and Sydney. Time zones, the time zone for Paris is +1, the time zone for Sydney is +2. Time difference is 9 hours. If you subtract 1 from 10, you get 9 hours. Add the lines. So if we add these lines from 1, you'd have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which gives you 9 counts, and that is your time difference. The arrow, you have to add from the given time, and the arrow shows that the direction of our movement is towards the east, or it's eastward, and use the clock to find the exact time. The final game for Rugby World Cup, this was the question. As you can see here, it is combined with the answer so that you follow all the steps that are indicated on the card. Right. I want us to refer to our map, or I hope you are doing the physical counting from your map. So here is another activity. Linda is a teacher from Moscow. She phones a friend in Rio de Janeiro on Saturday, the 17th of February at 04:00. That is the correct way of writing time. Calculate the time, day, and the date that her friends received the call in Rio de Janeiro. So in responding to this question, One, you have your two cities, that is Rio de Janeiro and Moscow in Russia. Rio, which is in Brazil, is at -3, and Moscow, which is in Russia, is at +2. So those are your time zone you have established there. The time difference is 6 hours. Remember, we are counting from -3, and then we'll first count the -2, the -1, the 0, which is our universal time coordinate, and you'll get to the +1, you'll get to the +2, and as you get to the +2, +3, you shall have counted 6 times. So the time difference in hours between the two cities is 6 hours. Now, as we move with our steps to demonstrate this method of calculation, then you have established your 6 hours of time difference. Then you have to add the lines. The lines that we have crossed are 6 of them, which represent 6 hours, and the given time from our question is 4 hours. And if we add the 6 lines that we had, you'll get to 7, and you'll have 8, 9. Oh, sorry. We are moving westward because we have our determined time as 4:00. So as we move backwards 6 times, as you count, you would count from 4, you'll have 5. Oh, you'll have 3, I'm sorry, because we are minusing. You'll have 2, you'll have 1, you'll have 00 hours, which is our midnight, and you'll get to 23 hours and arrive at 22 hours. And remember that here we are talking of the Saturday, the 17th of February. So as we get backward, we reach the 00 hour, which is our midnight, and then our Rio de Janeiro will fall into the previous day because they haven't seen as yet the midnight. So in Rio, or in Moscow, it was the 17th of February. And as we count, as we determine the 2 times, we come to a realization that we get behind by 6 hours and we fall into the previous day. So when Moscow, it is the following day, in Rio is still the previous day, and Rio will only see the 17th after a count of 6 hours. So in your calculation, you are still referred to the clock that give us accurate counting when we work with time zone. And this is another activity or a set of activities. It says determine the time in the following cities if it is 12 hours in Johannesburg. So there's New York, Perth, Cairo, Tokyo, Los Angeles, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, Nairobi, London, and Beijing. Yeah. So here is your clock. I'll take one example, and we work out the memo based on the clock here. So it says determine the time in the following cities if it is 12 hours in Johannesburg. Here is our New York. The timeline is 5, or the time zone is 5, and Johannesburg is at +2. So the time difference is 7 hours. So, oh, sorry, yeah, the time difference between the two countries is 7 hours. Now, I want to us to get back to the clock and do the counting. So South Africa, we said is 12 hours. And then if we move from 12, remember that New York is west of Johannesburg. And from 12, as we get backward, we'll say 11, we'll get to 10, we'll get to 9, 8, 7, 6, and 4. So you'll have 12 hours. When we subtract the 7 that we have, we'll get into 5. So the time will be 5 hours, counting from 12 backwards from our clock, we'll get to 5. So if we count 7 places from 12, we'll land at 5. So as you can see here, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we would get to 5. So the time difference between the two is 7 hours. So if it's 12 hours in South Africa, Johannesburg, it will be 5 hours in the morning in New York. So it further strengthened the idea that New York is behind South Africa by 7 hours, and South Africa sees the day before New York, or the new day before New York. Now, let's move to the next activity, which is the arrival time, calculation of the arrival time. So what we have covered thus far is the time difference, the calculation of the time difference, and determining the time or the local time of another city when is from a given time. South African flight attendant Linda Botha would like to redeem her travel benefits by going on holiday to Bangkok, Thailand. Her flight from OR Tambo International Airport to Bangkok leaves at 17 hours, Friday the 20th of September. The flying time will be 18 hours. Here is the question. Calculate the time, day and date of arrival in Bangkok, Thailand. Show all the calculations. Now, here is we are determining the two lines or the two cities, the one in South Africa and the other one in Thailand, which is Bangkok. Bangkok is at +7, South Africa is at +2. The time difference between the two countries, if you count from 2 to 7, you'll have the time difference of 5 hours. So these are our vertical lines. It says determine the two vertical lines which we have determined, the +2 and the +7, representing the two cities, must be in the same position and as the location of the cities. Now we have plugged our two longitudes, which is a +2 and a +7, and we are given the time in South Africa, which is 17 hours on Friday, the 20th of September. So we want to determine what is the time here. The question mark determine the time. So the arrow is pointing towards the east. So as the arrow points eastwards, it means that we are going to end. Right. So it is 17 hours, and the time difference between Bangkok and Johannesburg is 5 hours. As we've seen, we have counted from South Africa from point number 2 to get to 7. You travel over 5 time zones. which is 5 hours of time difference. So if the time in South Africa is 17 hours plus 5 hours of the time difference, it means it will be 22 hours in Bangkok. Now, the flying time refers to the time spent in a flight or the time of your journey. As you travel, you spend a particular time, and that time is added to determine your arrival time. So after establishing the difference in time between the two cities, you then add the time that was spent on the flight, and that is referred to as the flying time, and that will give you the arrival time. So it will be 22 plus 18, and as you use the watch, counting from 22 to 18 plus 18 hours of flying time, you will arrive at 16 hours, and this should be the following day because you have moved past the 24 hours into another day. I trust that I have met your expectation, grade 12 learners. We are going to take a 3 minutes break, and when we get back, we'll continue with further calculations. So this was just a demonstration of the arrival time. So after 3 minutes pause, we'll get back to continue with the calculations. Grade 12 learners, welcome back. We need to proceed. Remember to WhatsApp your queries to 079 578 2908. So we're still on the arrival time, and when we brain, we had performed the calculation. So the first step, you determine the location of the two cities. From there, you calculate the time difference to determine the time in another city, which is not given. And then you add or subtract the time difference depending on whether you are moving eastwards or westwards. And after arriving at the answer, you plus the flying time, and that should give you the correct answer. Daylight saving time, in short, it's DST, or the acronym used is DST. Countries use DST to enjoy more hours of daylight during their summer. DST is applied by moving a clock or watches 1 hour forward or ahead, and this happens during summer. So countries that practice daylight saving time in summer would normally adjust their watches by 1 hour during summer. That is your daylight saving time. Daylight saving time application for the calculation on the map. So how do we apply daylight saving time on the map? Right, here you are given the case of New York, which we spoke about, that it is at -5, as you can see here, it's indicated. And Sydney, Australia, it's at +10. Now, say you are given a scenario where both these countries are practicing daylight saving time. New York is at -5. So if it is summer and they are practicing daylight saving time, it will move automatically to -4. So New York will adjust their time ahead, and instead of staying at -5, it will move to -4. The same applies to Sydney, which is at +10, but during summer, when they practice daylight saving time, it will adjust their time, and they will move from longitude +10 and to longitude +11. So on the time zone map, the DST time zone will be 1, time zone east to the right from the standard time zone for the city, meaning that you just move one time zone ahead eastward if the country is practicing daylight saving time. Calculating arrival time with DST. As you might realize, the calculations are progressing into a level of difficulty. So we are adding a lot of things to the simple calculation that we started with in the beginning. Linda invited her friend Michelle from London in England to join her on her holiday in Bangkok, Thailand. Michelle departed London on the 22nd of September at 12:00. The flying time to Bangkok is 11 hours. Consider DST in London. Calculate her arrival time and day in Bangkok. So London is at +0. This is the first step, and Bangkok is at +7. So we have managed to get the different time zones for the two cities. The given time is that of London, which is 12, and that was when the flight departed. Right. Now, we want to establish the DST in conjunction with the arrival time to Bangkok. So it is the 22nd of September of that particular year. What we want to establish is the arrival time here, as you can see the question marks. Right. And this is the memo for another calculation. Let's see if we cannot find the right. It is not here. We'll revert back to the question and do the memo. I'm sure it's not included in here. Right. Here is our London and Bangkok. This is the memo. If the given time is 12 hours in London, and with the time difference, of 6 hours, then the arrival time, let me put matters into the right perspective. Right. From the question, we've learned that London is using DST and London is at 0. So they have to adjust their time ahead by 1 hour. So meaning that London will move from 0 to +1 because London is applying DST. Right. So from +1 to 6, you'd count +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, +7, and the time difference would be 6 hours. So if you add the 6 hours, is added to the time in London from the question, which we have learned is 12 hours, then it means when it is 12 hours in London, then in Bangkok, as we add the 6 hours, it will be 18 hours. Now, here is our flying time here of 11 hours. So if it's added to the answer, plus 11 hours, and when you use the clock counting, because we are adding here, you'd say plus 11, and then as you count from 18, adding 11, you'd say you'd have 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 hours, which is midnight, and then you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the next day. So the flight will arrive at 5 hours on the 23rd of September. So the memo here was not complete, as you might be aware. So the time, if it's 12 o'clock, the flight left at 12 o'clock on Sunday, it will get to Bangkok on a Monday, the 23rd of September. Right. So if we move forward, and this is a memo for another activity between Sydney and Johannesburg. Here is the calculations. So it was 10 hours in Johannesburg, and we wanted to establish what the time would be in Sydney, Australia. Australia here it's applying DST and it will move from +10 to +11. If we add 1 hour, the flying time between the two countries is 15 hours. And if you do +2 and +10, the time difference will be, instead of 8 hours under normal circumstances, but because of this 1 hour, the time difference will be 9 hours because Sydney has moved to +11 because of DST. So if it's 10 hours in Johannesburg, plus 9 hours of time difference, it will mean that it will be 19 hours in Sydney if it's 10 hours in Johannesburg. And if you add 15 hours of flying time to 19 hours, because the movement is eastwards here, you'll have 19, 20, or you'll have 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then, you'll have 19, you'll have 20, which 21, 22, 23, 24, and then that is your midnight, and then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it will arrive the next day at 10 hours because it departed on the 5th of December. So the flight, as we add the flying time and the DST, will reach the destination, which is Sydney, Australia, by 10 hours. Question 6, or activity 6. The flight leaves Johannesburg at 10. Oh, this was the question of the previous memo that we spoke about. But from that memo, we managed to work out the question. Skip this. Here is a duplicate of the memo that we have just worked out. And they wanted us to calculate the flying time, which we have done in conjunction with DST. This is the question. It was not put in a proper place. I think we have done this calculation already. Here is further the memorandum that indicates that the flying time was 11 hours, and if added, so the flight will reach its destination on the time that we had alluded to. Right, this is our time zone map. As you can see here, the one that will be provided, the appropriate map will have a clock here, which will help you with the calculations. So this one, I think we have managed already. Now, this brings us to those steps of the calculations, which I will sum up just before the end of the lesson. Now, I want us to look into the concept of jet lag and jet fatigue as they apply in the flight industry. So, by definition, both the conditions are the same. Jet lag is an extreme tiredness and other physical effects felt by the person after a long flight, crossing many time zones. The extreme tiredness and other physical effects felt by a person after a long flight across different time zones is referred to as jet lag. Jet fatigue, by definition, is tiredness caused by long distance travel, spending many hours in an aeroplane. Jet fatigue is experienced when the traveler crosses a few time zones. travel does not affect the body circadian or internal body clock rhythm. So that is your jet fatigue. The difference is that the other one, you need to cross many time zone, and the many time zones here is not defined. It was just many time zone. So, but to differentiate between the two, you need to at least cross more than 3 time zone to have jet lag. And with jet fatigue, you cross 1 or 2 time zone, then you'll experience jet fatigue. Or at some point, you'll travel across the same parallel or the same time zone, but for long distance. An example being traveling from Cape Town to Egypt, to Cairo in Egypt. They are both on +2, but the distance is long. That's when you feel jet fatigue. Jet lag versus jet fatigue. Jet lag is experienced after a very long flight. So is jet fatigue. It's also experienced after a very long flight. As you can see, these are similarities. When a traveler crosses many time zones, then this is the distinction. Here with jet lag, many time zones are crossed, but with jet fatigue, only a few time zones are crossed. Especially when crossing time zone from east to west against the rotation of the Earth. We have alluded to the fact that the Earth rotates from west to east. So if you go against the rotation, you are likely to experience jet lag. Example of jet fatigue: when you travel from Johannesburg to London, there are only 2 time zones that you cross, as the difference in time is only 2. London is at 0, this one is at +2. So the difference in time here is 2 hours. So you are not likely to experience jet lag, but you will feel only the effects of jet fatigue. Example here with jet lag: a flight that leaves from Japan to New York from far east to New York, you have crossed so many time zones because this one is at -5 and this one is at +8. So you can imagine the number of time zones that you are crossing. So, and the movement is against the rotation of the clock. You are moving from the east and getting into the west. So you are likely to experience jet lag with this one. So those are the similarities and differences. That the other one, you cross many time zones, and the other one, very fewer time zones. And if you come to account jet lag, it has to be more than 3 time zones, and jet fatigue, not more than 3 time zones. Discuss the difference between the concept jet lag and jet fatigue. Write one comparison paragraph and provide one example of each concept. This we have done in our explanation. I hope you find it easier. Jet lag is experienced when a tourist travels or flies over many time zones, most often from east to west. That is against the rotation of the Earth. It is caused by disruption to our daily patterns of behavior and biological clock. This disruption negatively affects our sleep patterns. An example of jet lag may be when a traveler flies from South Africa to New York, where you would cross how many time zones? 7 time zones. Jet fatigue, however, is experienced when one is traveling over a long distance in a long-haul flight, and you'll cross fewer time zones. It is tiredness caused by being in the confines of a cabin for a long time, seated mostly in a pressurized dry air, causing dehydration and not being able to sleep much on board. An example of jet fatigue may be when one is flying between Europe and South Africa without crossing many time zones. It's either one or two time zones that you are crossing. Any example with north or south-north travel without crossing many time zones, like if you leave South Africa, for instance, Morocco, you don't cross any time zones, and that would be your jet fatigue, but the distance it's long. Activity 9 also demonstrate jet fatigue or and jet lag. Determine whether a tourist will experience jet lag or jet fatigue on flight A and B. Motivate one reason. Your answer to question 2.2.1a. Right. Here is the marking guide. This is obviously jet lag. And if we get back to the picture, as you can see, it is moving from this continent and to this one, to Australia. So we're moving from South America to Australia, and we travel past Africa to another continent. And yeah, it shows as to multiple time zones that the flight has crossed, and the resultant thereof would be jet lag. So the flight is from east to west. The flight is crossing more than 3 time zones or many time zones. So I've been emphasizing on the 3 time zones. That's when you feel jet lag. Flight is traveling against the rotation of the Earth because it comes from Australia right through to New York. The symptoms of jet lag, not jet light, but jet lag, spelled like this. The symptoms will be sleep problems such as not being able to fall asleep or waking up early, daytime fatigue, not being able to focus or function at your usual level, stomach problems such as constipation and diarrhea, a general feeling of not being well, and as well as mood changes. These are some of the symptoms of jet lag. More in detail, you'll feel nausea, insomnia, disorientation, confusion, constipation, headaches, diarrhea, irritability, interrupted sleep, dehydration, legs and feet discomfort, indigestion, sweating, loss of appetite, and anxiety. So here you are expected to list any 2 symptoms a tourist may experience after flight A and B. So these are all the symptoms. You can take a screenshot so that you internalize them in your own spare time. Moving forward, ways to minimize jet lag before the flight. That is, before you board on a flight, if you know you are taking a long haul flight or a long trip that will make you cross so many time zones. So before you board on a flight, you must exercise as much as possible, eat healthy, rest as much as possible, go to sleep, and get up earlier every morning. So these are some of the things that you need to do days before you undertake a trip. Before a flight doesn't suggest a day before you go, but it has to be a workout over a couple of days. During a flight, when you are inside the flight, you need to drink lots of water, stay away from coffee and alcohol, or here you can say caffeinated drinks. You must also eat healthy food, try to sleep, walk down the aisle at least once after every hour. That will help you minimize the effects of jet lag. Ways to minimize jet lag as we continue. After the flight, adapt to local schedule as soon as possible. Try to establish sleeping pattern according to the times of the destination. You may take a few days of rest. So yeah, you don't need to get into the activities after this flight. You need to rest enough before you indulge in any activities. So these ways of minimizing jet lag, remember, are categorized into three. That is before the flight, on the flight, and after the flight. Please know the difference or the different activities that you need to take in those three occasions that are listed. Study the picture below. Select two pictures and explain how the Gordon couple can minimize the effect of jet lag during and or after the flight related to each picture. Write the letter of the selected picture, A to D, and your explanation. Number A, avoid the use of alcohol during the flight. Avoid caffeinated drinks. As you can see here, it's alcohol and teas. So you avoid those drinks. Drinks cause dehydration. So these are your further elaboration on why the tourists must avoid alcohol during the flight. Drink a lot of fluid, that is your number B. It indicates water, that you need to drink a lot of water. As it is emphasized here, especially water during and after the flight. Our number C, get enough rest before the flight and try to rest during the flight. Take short naps, use sleeping aids like earplugs. And the fourth one, that it indicates a clock, that is the time in New York, a rest watch. Adjust your watch to be in line with the arrival time in the city of arrival. Try to fit in with the local time at the destination. Try to get back to normal sleeping time as soon as possible. And in so doing, you'll minimize the effects of jet lag as per picture. We have come to the end of this lesson. It needs a lot of practice. Please, every time, do look into past papers. Try to attempt questions to master the time zone calculation. So from these calculations, we have learned a lot of things. We have learned how to calculate the local time. We have learned how to identify the cities in question. We have learned how to calculate the time difference. We have learned how to calculate the arrival time. We have learned how to calculate the departure time. And those are part of the calculations. And also, we have learned how to add the flying time as well as daylight saving time. You need to take a lot of practice to master this content. It is easy, and let it not terrorize you during the examination or any assessment. The questions normally are long. Please break down the question into simpler and manageable portions so that you get the gist of what the question wants. On that note, Keep the practice, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Goodbye.